10 women, 3 states, 1 chilling coincidence, if that's what it really is. It started quietly. A body pulled from a river here, a woman missing after a night out there. Weeks apart, miles apart, no official connection, just another tragedy, until it kept happening. Norwalk, Springfield, Groton, small towns and cities across New England, suddenly united by fear. Young women, many in their 20s and 30s, vanishing, then turning up dead. Some near water, some in wooded areas. One found stuffed in a suitcase. Police departments have stayed calm. They say there's no pattern, no threat to the public. But locals aren't buying it. TikTok timelines, Reddit theories, Facebook sleuths, people are asking the questions police won't. Why are so many victims disappearing in similar ways? Why is no one connecting the dots, officially? And most haunting of all, is there a serial killer stalking New England right now? Or is this just a string of tragic coincidences that feels too familiar to ignore? The first case that started turning heads was Paige Fannon, 28 years old, lived in Norwalk, Connecticut. Smart, outgoing, worked in marketing, had a tight-knit group of friends. By all accounts, nothing out of the ordinary. On March 9th, 2025, she went out downtown for drinks. It was a Saturday night. She'd been bar hopping with friends. Normal night out. But sometime after 1:30 in the morning, she left alone. Last seen on a surveillance camera near Wall Street, walking toward the Norwalk River. The footage shows her moving steadily, not stumbling, no signs of distress. And then, nothing. She never made it home. 2 days later, a kayaker found her body floating in the Norwalk River, fully clothed, no wallet, no obvious wounds, just dead. The autopsy came back inconclusive. Toxicology showed alcohol, but not enough to suggest she blacked out or overdosed. Police chalked it up to a tragic accident. Said she probably slipped near the edge and fell in. Closed the case fast. No foul play suspected. But people who knew her didn't buy that. Paige wasn't reckless. She wasn't the type to wander off drunk near deep water in the middle of the night. And where exactly she entered the water? Still unclear. There was no press conference, no big public warning, just a quiet funeral and a story that faded fast, until another woman turned up dead, then another. And suddenly, Paige's case didn't feel so random anymore. She became the first in a disturbing series. Women in their 20s and 30s, all found near water or in secluded rural areas. Most last seen at night, and all within a few hours' drive of each other. At the time, no one could have known she'd be the first name in a growing pattern. But looking back, this is where the fear started. Because Paige Fannon didn't just disappear. She set off a timeline that hasn't stopped growing. Just 3 weeks later, another woman, another body, another mystery. Her name was Meredith. 33 years old, lived in Springfield, Massachusetts. Originally from New Hampshire. Moved for work. Described by friends as low-key, responsible, not someone who partied hard or took risks. On the night of March 30th, she left her apartment around 10 p.m. to meet a friend for dinner. The friend later said Megan never showed. She didn't respond to texts, didn't answer calls. By midnight, people were worried. Police were notified the next morning. At first, there wasn't much to go on. No signs of forced entry, no unusual activity on her phone or credit cards. Then, 48 hours later, a jogger discovered her body in a wooded area off Parker Street. Less than 10 minutes from her home. No obvious injuries, no clothing missing, no signs of a struggle, at least not publicly shared. Again, police moved quickly. They told the media there was no danger to the public, called it an isolated incident, didn't speculate on what caused her death. But people started noticing the similarities. Megan was around the same age as Paige. She went missing at night. Her body was found in a quiet, secluded area, just like Paige. And again, no real answers. There was no press conference, no emotional plea from investigators, just a short news story and a community left wondering what really happened. That's when the whispers began. 2 women, 3 weeks apart. Different states, but barely 2 hours by car, both found in places you don't just end up by accident. And the scariest part? This still wasn't the last. In fact, things were only just beginning. Then came the case that changed everything, the one that turned quiet concern into full-blown fear. Suzanne Wormser, 31 years old. Lived in Groton, Connecticut, a small coastal town near the submarine base. She worked remotely for a tech firm out of Boston. Didn't go out much, didn't post a lot online. Friends described her as private, introverted, and extremely routine-driven. On April 18th, Suzanne stopped replying to texts, didn't clock into her work meetings, didn't check in with her sister, which she always did. By April the 20th, neighbors noticed something wasn't right. Her car hadn't moved. Lights were off. Packages were still sitting untouched by the door. It was like she vanished in the middle of her life. Police were called for a wellness check. They entered her apartment, found nothing obviously wrong. No signs of forced entry, no blood, no struggle, just eerie stillness. But a day later, about a mile from her home, everything changed. A city worker doing cleanup near an old industrial access road noticed a large suitcase off the path. It was heavy, taped shut, dumped behind a pile of debris near an overgrown fence. Inside was Suzanne, wrapped in plastic, fully clothed, positioned carefully, almost methodically, and clearly placed there on purpose. This wasn't a disappearance. This wasn't a woman who wandered off and met an accident. This was murder, intentional, premeditated, and chillingly precise. The suitcase had no fingerprints, no blood, nothing obvious to lead to a suspect. The medical examiner didn't release the full cause of death publicly. All we know is that she didn't die of natural causes. Police opened a homicide investigation, finally acknowledging foul play. But even then, they told the public there was no ongoing threat. They called it targeted, said it was likely someone she knew. But here's what didn't add up. Suzanne had no exes with criminal records, no known stalkers, no reason anyone would want her dead. She didn't live a high-risk lifestyle. She didn't owe anyone money. She was the last person anyone expected to end up like that. And the suitcase, that detail shook people, because it meant planning. It meant whoever did this came prepared. It wasn't a crime of passion, it was methodical. And suddenly, the earlier cases, the women found in rivers, the unexplained vanishings, didn't feel random anymore. Paige Fannon, Meredith, now Suzanne Wormser. 3 women, 3 different towns, all in their 20s and 30s, all missing at night, all found dead, and all within 75 miles of each other. Now the public was on high alert, because this wasn't just a tragic accident or even a one-off homicide. This looked like a pattern, and it looked like escalation. Paige was found in a river, Megan in the woods. But Suzanne, she was hidden, packaged, dumped. This was a different level. Online, people started saying what law enforcement wouldn't. There's something going on. Someone out there is targeting women, and no one in authority is sounding the alarm. And just like that, the timeline grew darker. Suzanne's case wasn't the end. It was the tipping point. Because after her, the bodies didn't stop showing up. They just got harder to explain, and harder to ignore. After Suzanne Wormser, everything blurred. Because the next wave of cases didn't come with names. They came with headlines, whispers, and bodies. In early May, a woman's body was found along the Connecticut River near Middletown. No ID, no missing persons match. Mid-30s, found fully clothed, no trauma visible. Police said she had likely been in the water for some time. No follow-up, no press release, just a single local news story, and silence. 2 weeks later, A hiker in western Massachusetts stumbled across human remains in a shallow ravine. The area was remote. No trails. Forensics estimated the body had been there for at least a week. Again, no ID. They couldn't even determine cause of death at first. They said she may have been camping or transient. But no tent, no gear, no vehicle, just a woman, dead and alone. Then came June, and a jogger found a body partially submerged in a swampy area outside Warwick, Rhode Island. Decomposition was advanced. The coroner said the victim was likely in her late 20s. Another woman, another mystery, still no name. By this point, online communities were in full conspiracy mode. People started mapping out every death, trying to track the distances and dates. They noticed the bodies were all showing up near water, rivers, lakes, marshes. Many were found early in the morning, or after disappearing late at night, and nearly all of them fit the same general profile. Female, 20s to 30s, alone, unaccounted for, until they weren't. Some weren't even being reported until locals brought them up. One case was discovered only because a local TikToker drove past an active investigation site and filmed the police taping off a wooded area. It was never covered in the news, no statement, no follow-up. And here's the creepiest part. We don't even know how many there really are, because not every body gets linked. Not every disappearance is treated as suspicious, and not every woman who vanishes gets a headline. Some could still be missing. Some may have never been reported at all. Some were likely ruled accidental without a second look. But one thing kept repeating: found near water. No clear cause of death. Young, female, alone. It was like watching the same nightmare on loop. Only the location changed, and still no central investigation. No multi-agency task force. No warnings from police departments. Just a rising body count, and a growing sense that someone, somewhere knows exactly what's going on, and they're not saying a word. As the bodies kept turning up, police departments stayed quiet, but the internet didn't. TikTok lit the fuse. Clips started going viral, some just 30 seconds long. Maps of New England. Pins dropped where each woman was found. Users circling locations, drawing lines, calling it too close to be random. Reddit followed fast. Threads popped up on r/unresolved mysteries, r/true crime, and even local subs like r/Connecticut and r/Massachusetts. People were comparing news reports, pulling dates, names, missing persons posters. Some users even tracked police scanner logs, searching for mentions of unidentified female recoveries near water. And then came the theory that made everything feel worse: the smiley face killer. If you've never heard of it, it's an old theory from the early 2000s. Dozens of college-aged men found dead in rivers across the Midwest. Similar circumstances. Bodies discovered days or weeks later, fully clothed, no signs of violence. Authorities called them drownings. Internet sleuths called it murder. They claimed a group of killers was targeting victims and leaving smiley face graffiti nearby. That theory was never proven. But now, people were saying, what if it's happening again, just with women, and this time in New England? TikTok creators pointed out how many of the recent victims had been found near bridges, parks, or desolate walking paths. Areas with no cameras, no foot traffic, and easy water access. Redditors went even deeper. Some created full spreadsheets of the cases, cross-referencing autopsy timelines, last-seen locations, even weather patterns. One post with over 10,000 upvotes claimed that 5 of the victims vanished during a new moon, when nights are pitch black. Another user noticed that several bodies were found on Sundays just before sunrise. Then came the suspicions. People began to think the silence from law enforcement wasn't just caution. It was a cover-up. Why weren't they warning the public? Why weren't the cases being grouped together? Why were families being told not to talk to the media? In Facebook groups, especially local ones in Connecticut and Massachusetts, residents started sounding the alarm. Some warned their daughters not to walk alone at night. Others claimed to know of more bodies that never made the news. There were even rumors of police scanners being scrubbed after certain calls. Whether any of it was true didn't seem to matter anymore, because the internet had made up its mind. This wasn't a coincidence, and whatever was happening in New England, someone was hiding it. By this point, the public was panicking. Social media was buzzing with theories. True crime podcasts were already recording deep dives, and people across New England were starting to change their behavior. Not walking alone, avoiding night outings, checking in with friends more than usual. But local police departments, they stuck to the script. There is no indication these cases are connected. No threat to the public. Each case is being investigated individually. And it wasn't just one department. From Norwalk to Springfield to Groton, the language was nearly identical. Almost rehearsed, because in a way, it is. Law enforcement, especially at the federal level, is trained to respond this way. The FBI and local departments alike are taught to keep calm at all costs. When there's even a whiff of a serial offender, they avoid confirming it publicly. Why? Because panic makes investigations harder. If the public thinks there's a serial killer on the loose, you get chaos, hundreds of false tips, paranoia, accusations against innocent people, and, worst of all, the real suspect, if there is one, goes quiet, changes tactics, disappears underground. So the official line stays simple. No connection, no danger, no further comment. It's damage control. And in theory, it makes sense. But here's where it starts to fall apart. When the bodies keep piling up, and the story doesn't change. The arrest of Donald Koffel was supposed to help. Police said it was an isolated incident, domestic violence, not part of a larger pattern, case closed. But for people watching closely, it did the opposite. If you can arrest someone in one case, that proves foul play is on the table. So why are all the others being treated like accidents? Why wasn't there a regional task force formed after the third or fourth body? Why did it take TikTok videos hitting millions of views for the media to even ask questions? And why, in every single police statement, is there no acknowledgement of the bigger picture? Because when you line up the cases side by side, it's impossible not to notice. Nearly every victim is a woman. Most are in their late 20s to early 30s. Almost all disappeared late at night. Almost all were found near bodies of water or in isolated areas. And all within a 150-mile radius. It's not just creepy, it's patterned. Still, the official response is, nothing to see here. And that's what's fueling the anger. Because people aren't stupid. They know what no comment really means. They know when they're being pacified. Even former detectives have weighed in anonymously, saying if this were happening in New York or Los Angeles, there'd be press conferences, FBI involvement, national coverage, but because it's scattered across smaller towns in New England, and because the victims don't all have the same MO, the public is left with vague statements, closed cases, and no accountability. And here's the most frustrating part. If there is a serial offender, then someone out there knows how this works. They're taking advantage of the silence, of the gaps between cases, of the fact that authorities are more afraid of causing panic than they are of missing a killer. That's what terrifies people the most. Not just that it's happening, but that it might keep happening. And no one in power is willing to say the words out loud. At this point, the question everyone's asking is simple. What's actually happening in New England? Because 10 women don't just vanish, turn up dead, and get written off one by one, without something bigger going on. Across Reddit, TikTok, and comment sections everywhere, 3 main theories have taken hold, and none of them are comforting. Theory 1. A serial killer is active and hiding in plain sight. This is the theory that's caught fire online, and when you look at the details, it's not hard to see why. A lone offender, possibly a man in his 30s to 50s. Smart, calculated, moves between towns, never strikes in the same place twice, targets women with similar profiles, young, alone, often near nightlife or transit areas, and then dumps the bodies in rivers, woods, or marshes to destroy evidence. Some speculate he could be a trucker. Others say law enforcement. Even more believe he might work a regular job, quiet, polite, completely forgettable, because whoever this is, if this theory holds, he's careful, he avoids cameras, he doesn't draw attention, and he chooses victims who are likely to be written off, labeled accidental, missing, or unconfirmed. The suitcase in Suzanne Wormser's case? That detail haunts people. It screams planning, control. This wasn't someone who snapped. This was someone who knew what they were doing. And look at the pattern. Multiple women found in water, an old tactic used to obscure time of death, fingerprints, DNA, bodies found in remote areas, places without surveillance, all within a few hours of each other by car. It's a method, and if it is one person, then that person is incredibly skilled at not getting caught. But here's the counter-argument. No clear signature, no repeated weapon, no taunting messages, no physical evidence linking the victims together. Law enforcement often looks for distinct behavioral patterns, signatures, in serial offenders. So far, there isn't a concrete one here, and that's what gives police cover to keep saying, there's no proof these are connected. But what if that's the point? What if the killer knows how signatures work and deliberately avoids them? What if this person is evolving with each crime, staying just one step ahead? That possibility alone is enough to keep millions of people glued to the updates. Not for entertainment, but because something about it feels all too real. Theory 2. Separate, tragic cases. Some accidents, some murders, but no connection. This is the official line. The theory favored by most departments and some criminologists. That what's happening isn't one big story. It's several small ones. That Paige Fannon, for example, may have fallen into the river while intoxicated. That Meredith might have encountered someone she knew, who turned violent. That Suzanne Wormser's case is a clear-cut homicide, just not part of a bigger chain. And the rest? Some overdoses, some suicides, some disappearances with unknown causes, all tragic, all heartbreaking, but not linked. Supporters of this theory say the pattern people are seeing is mostly psychological. The human brain is wired to find connections even when none exist. Put enough red pins on a map and draw enough circles, and anything can look like a conspiracy. And that's not wrong. People have jumped to conclusions before. Online true crime sleuths have accused innocent people, falsely linked cases that turned out to have no connection whatsoever. But still, this one feels different. Because the timing, the geography, the victim profiles, it all feels too aligned, too clean, too close. It's possible these deaths aren't linked, but it's also possible they look unlinked because no one's investigating them side by side. And that's the biggest weakness in this theory. It assumes coincidence on a massive scale. And while coincidence is real, 10 bodies in 3 states over a few months, that's a heavy ask. Theory 3. Human trafficking or an organized network is operating in the region. This is the darkest and most elusive theory. It suggests these women weren't random victims. They were targets, selected, taken. Supporters of this idea believe someone, or multiple people, are running a trafficking operation through New England. That women are being lured, abducted, and then either discarded when things go wrong, or eliminated if they resist. They point to the geography. Remote wooded areas, coastal towns with easy port access, back roads that slip between states undetected. They reference known trafficking routes through the E95 corridor, and they argue the water disposal method isn't about hiding a body. It's about covering tracks after a deal went bad, or a victim got too loud. There are rumors of unmarked vehicles seen in the same neighborhoods, unconfirmed reports of women being followed, even a few whispers that one of the bodies had ligature marks, though no official report ever backed that up. So far, there's no proof of this theory. No arrests, no confirmed trafficking link, no inside whistleblower. But that's what makes it terrifying. If it is an organized ring, it would be quiet by design. No evidence, no slip-ups, and no bodies found, unless they want them to be found. And here's the real fear. What if these cases are connected, but not by one killer? What if there's a network operating silently, and what we're seeing now are just the ones that didn't go according to plan? That possibility haunts people, because it doesn't just suggest one monster, it suggests many, coordinated, professional, invisible. So what's the truth? We still don't know. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's multiple, maybe it's nothing but tragic coincidence. But with each new case, each vague press release, each unanswered question, the public is losing trust. The fear is growing, and the theories, they're starting to sound more like warnings than wild guesses. And if someone is responsible, they're watching, and they know that every day without answers is another day they get to walk free. And then, there's the part no one wants to admit. The truth is, we still don't know what happened to most of these women. Many of the official reports are incomplete. Causes of death? Pending. Undetermined? No obvious signs of trauma. It's like the answers just vanish with the bodies. For several victims, toxicology reports never made headlines. For others, police never confirmed whether it was homicide, accident, or something else entirely. And then there are the women who still don't have names, unidentified. No photos released, no families stepping forward, maybe because they never even knew someone was missing, maybe because they were already forgotten. Some of these cases might never be solved. Some of these women may never be claimed. Their stories could end up buried with them, quiet, cold, and unanswered. And that's where this story gets darker, because the silence, the gaps, they don't calm people down. They feed the fear. When there's no clear suspect, no motive, no closure, your mind fills in the blanks, and in the age of algorithmic attention, those blanks get amplified. TikTok clips with chilling headlines, Reddit timelines that stretch for pages, YouTube videos connecting every death to the last. It's the perfect storm, real fear, mixed with digital obsession. People want to feel like they're part of solving something. They want justice, but they also want clicks. And when the truth is this blurry, it's easy for the story to spiral, because at this point, no one's sure what's real, what's exaggerated, or what's still out there, waiting to happen next. So what is this really? Is New England just dealing with a violent spring? A tragic streak of unrelated deaths, all hitting at once? Or are we missing the bigger picture? Something darker, something coordinated, something still unfolding? Because one thing's clear, these aren't just names on a map. They were daughters, sisters, friends. And in most of these cases, the answers still aren't there. The silence from officials, the lack of clarity, it's not just frustrating, it's terrifying. And someone out there knows more than they're saying. What do you think is really happening? A serial killer hiding in plain sight? A string of disconnected tragedies? Or something even more organized, just beneath the surface? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Your theory might be closer to the truth than you realize.